Basically, all it's stating is, if you enjoy music, sing along joyfully.
All ye who music, all ye who music love, and would its pleasures prove. All ye who music, all ye who music love, and would its pleasures prove. Oh, come to us who cease, not daily cease, not daily cease, not daily, from morn till eve, to warble gaily, from morn till eve, to warble gaily. La 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 Come lads and lasses, come lads and lasses, all obey the tuneful call. Come lads and lasses, come lads and lasses, all obey the tuneful call. Oh, come to us who cease, not daily cease, not daily cease, not daily, from morn till eve, to warble gaily, from morn till eve, to warble gaily. La 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 la
This ceremony has been organized by Marie Caldwell and the Celebration Committee. And our first part of the program, we will have the posting of the colors, the pledge by the Sons of the American Revolution Color Guard. Would you all please stand?
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color Guard, hoist the colors.
Thank you. You all may be seated. As you know, we are celebrating 200 years as a county. I'm Peggy Bevels, your Lincoln County Mayor, and I want to welcome every one of you here today. And you know, we've never had a 200th birthday, so we're going to start today, and we're going to go through July the 4th. So that we can celebrate everything that we want to have known about our county. So you will be getting notices. You could be seeing notices in the Elk Valley Times, on WKR, WITM, Channel 6, and you'll know everything when it's going to occur. So we'd like to see that you make your presence known at each event. On behalf of Fayetteville, Lincoln County, Ardmore, and Petersburg, we want to make sure that you know that you're welcome here. And I'm not going to give much history on Lincoln County because we have historians here today that can do much better. We were signed into law, and the book is back there behind our people that's sitting here in the front, that you can look at as you go out, and you'll see how beautiful it's printed. And it was November of 1809 to become effective in 1810, January 1. So we became a county at that time, and our county is named after Revolutionary War General Benjamin Lincoln. And at this time, we'll ask our Reverend Thomas Ward, who is the Reverend for the First United Methodist Church, to do our invocation.
I invite you to pray with me. Good afternoon, God. We gather here in this beautiful space, mindful of the legacy that has gone before us. We're so grateful for the men and women of this community long ago who had a vision and a purpose for a wonderful place to live, work, and raise a family. May this day and all that follows in the days ahead be truly a celebration of this wonderful community. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Ward. Next, we'll hear from our Fayetteville Mayor, Gwen Shelton.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, citizens of Fayetteville and Lincoln County, I'm proud to be here today and be part of Lincoln County's bicentennial celebration. When I think about Lincoln County and when it was founded, I can't help but be intrigued by the bravery of our original settlers, the willingness to confront uncertain odds, to take on dangerous challenges and dare to create something new, to lead and not follow, to be bold and push beyond one's comforts and overcome one's fears, to fight for what is needed to bring about a secure and thriving community. Today we'll hear lots of stories. We'll hear names such as Abbott, Norris, Alexander, Bright. We hear our Cherokee and Chickasaw Indians. Together, we will continue to make Lincoln County something our founding fathers are proud of and our children will want to come back to for many, many generations. I want to say thank you for everybody being here today, and I hope you enjoy this bicentennial celebration here in Lincoln County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Shelton. On your agenda and your program, you will see that we have state government next. At this time, I'd like to ask our state senator, Sen Ketron, to come and say a few words to us, please. Or do you just want to stand up and be recognized? I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I can't let you get by with really everything going perfect.
Did not realize that I was going to say anything, but it's indeed a pleasure to be here for this great celebration. You know, my grandfather once told me to never forget where you come from. And I think that's so important that we don't forget our history, which brought Lincoln County to where it is today. And for all those who have passed, all those leaders who have passed since 1809, it's so important that we continue for the future and the next generations that will come after us long after we're gone. But as long as we recognize the history of this great community and everybody that had some influence, from Davy Crockett to, I think you'll see, General Jackson before he became president, all those others who have touched and put their fingerprint on this community is so important. And the General Assembly back in 1809 had the foresight to create this county and make it separate, because this was part of Bedford County originally, and I think they carved it out and made Lincoln County what it is today. But again, Mayor, it's a pleasure to be here and be part of this celebration, and I'm sure that Representative Marsh and I will be back several times for many other celebrations. We just want a bigger cake.
Okay, thank you. You did really well. You didn't need a prepared speech. And our new state representative, that's our new senator, is Pat Marsh, and we're so proud to have you here, and you will be coming many times.
Thank you, Mayor Bell.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me down here today. 200 years is a long, long time. I was born in Lincoln County in 1949, 60 years ago, and that seems like a long time to me, but 200 is amazing. I am so proud to be back connected with the folks that I grew up with and know from Lincoln County, and to help celebrate the 200th year and to talk about the 140 years that I know nothing about. So we're all in this together, and I hope to come back and visit with all of you a lot, and thank you so much for having me down for this great celebration today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next, we'll have one of our Lincoln County historians to talk, and this is Jerry Maxwell. Thank you, Jerry, for being here today.
Thank you, Mayor.
We're here to celebrate a particular point in time, about time. And 200 years, as Pat said, it's a pretty good trek down the road, but when you look at it, it's a blink in the eye of the history of the world and the history of this nation. 200 years ago, we came here for what reason? We came here because there was a river. The mighty Chihuahua, as it cut its way diagonally across this part of the country, was crossed by game animals, the buffalo and the elk that were here at that time, followed by the four tribes that had made their way through the other Native American cultures, Chickasaw, and Choctaw, and the Creek, Cherokee, who had made this their hunting ground and passed through here many times at the Great Indian Crossing, as it was called on the map that the Europeans first drew out to commemorate this particular location. We're here because Ezekiel Norris was basically tricked for a while to donate for a while 100 acres of land for this particular site. We're here because our ancestors decided this was a real good place to live and continue to raise their families. We didn't all stay. We're here today to mention some names that went on to other states to make them great. A name probably many of you have never heard. Dan Wagner, who lived in Mulberry, Tennessee, decided it was time to be gone to Texas. And he created, and his family still owns, the largest ranch under one fence in the state of Texas. The Wagner's bloodline still stays in Mulberry, many by that same name. We're here to mention John Neely Bryan, born in Fayetteville, Tennessee, just as soon as this town was formed in 1810. John Neely went on to become a student, an attorney, practiced law here, and he grew up with a sense of humor that I think many of us still have. He and his teenage friends one day decided that it would be good to create a story about a bear had come back to Fayetteville. And they alerted everybody about the bear that had been seen at the big town spring down below where Mr. Bobby Sims used to live. That bear story was circulated around town, and they decided to add to it a bear skin that had been long since dead that John Neely Bryan's mother had stored in the closet. So they brought some 10 and 11-year-old boys down, and one of the boys dressed up in the bear skin and scared the bestuffings out of all of them, who quickly ran back to town to tell Mama there really is a bear. John Neely and them quickly figured out they were in trouble because they mounted a massive bear hunt. They decided to join the bear hunt, and they guided the hunters to where the bear skin had been draped over some cane, basically broke off cane, and they helped kill the bear again. John Neely Bryan is a Lincoln Countyan that went on to have a dream. He went on to have a dream about Three Forks in the river when he went up to Manchester and saw the Three Forks in the Duck when he went up to the Great Stone Fort. That dream continued when he did his first. He became a very close ally to Native Americans, and he did his first trading post in Arkansas, Three Forks of a river. Later on, he rode south of the Arkansas trading post, and he ran up on Three Forks in the Trinity River, and there he decided to plot out a town. That town today, laid out by Lincoln Countyan, is Dallas, Texas. We're here to celebrate John Neely Bryan for being a Lincoln Countyan and for being one of the first children born here when this town was laid out. Whether you're a native or whether you just moved here, base realignment and closure, or you moved here to work for Frito-Lay, we're all Lincoln Countryans. We're all here to celebrate the times that made this county and will continue to make it great. And it's been my pleasure to be a part of it, and my family's pleasure to be a part of it, and it's a pleasure to talk to you today and share a little bit of the Lincoln County history with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Now we'll have the history of the oldest church in Lincoln County, and it will be by Reverend Todd Jenkins, and it's the First Presbyterian Church.
Thank you, Mayor Bevel. So I want to fast forward you about 3 years. Don't hurt yourself going that far, from 1809 to 1812. As has been stated, that would have been about 16 years after Tennessee became the nation's 16th state. And the cane brakes and the Native American footpaths and the wild beasts that defined and inhabited and ruled Fayetteville before its founding a mere 3 years earlier were far from domesticated in 1812. This was the year that 14 of Fayetteville settlers committed themselves to the formal organization of a church. And in September of that year, under the pastoral leadership of the Reverend John Gillespie, these 14 settlers formed a congregation that was originally called the Church of Fayetteville. It was always a Presbyterian congregation, but it wasn't until some years later that the Presbyterian moniker was attached. It's hard to imagine how small the town square was back then, how huddled together all of the buildings were. But to give you some perspective, the original courthouse was an 18 by 20 foot log structure, about storage shed size by today's standards. 10 years earlier, in 1802, Thomas Jefferson penned the now famous phrase, a wall of separation between church and state in a letter to Oswage, a religious group in Danbury, Connecticut, that was concerned about the state trying to direct and limit the particular forms and brands, if you will, of established religion. But in 1812, at least in these parts of Tennessee, it was still a time well before the idea of the separation of church and state was so vigorously interpreted, because for more than the first dozen of its early years, the Church of Fayetteville met in the log courthouse right here on the square. It wasn't until about 1832 that the church finally built its first sanctuary on about an acre or so of land that stood well beyond the corporate limits of Fayetteville, land that had been previously deeded to the church by James Bright. This land originally purchased by Bright from Fayetteville's first settler, Ezekiel Norris, in 1813. The 1832 original sanctuary building was surrounded by the town's first cemetery. Again, it's hard to imagine that the corner of Mulberry Avenue and College Street, as we know it now, just a stone's throw from here, was on the outskirts of town back then, but it was. The first sanctuary, presumed to be a wood frame building, though never formally described, didn't survive 20 years. The old minute book records record the words of Session Clerk John Morgan Bright this way: February 24th, 1851, between the hours of 4 and 5 o'clock this instant, it pleased the Almighty to loose the winds of heaven, and our church was crushed to its foundations. The dismembered fragments remind us that we have no abiding city here below. A little more than 3 years later, the present sanctuary was dedicated on September 17th, 1854. There have been a few additions since then, actually quite a few, and a number of significant detrimental effects from the Civil War. But that 1854 sanctuary, built from bricks burned on the spot, continues to be the root and source from which the members of First Presbyterian Church have attempted to faithfully worship and serve God in and with this community and the world ever since. It is a great honor, Mayor Bevels, and a joy for us to be a part of our town's bicentennial celebration, and we look forward to serving with you all and all of Fayetteville's congregations in this community for the next 200 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Larry Shelton, sons of the Confederate veterans.
It is a privilege to speak before this audience and an honor to represent our ancestors. I'm going to talk about a time when more Americans died than all the other wars combined. Based on the national average, it's safe to say that over 700 Lincoln Countyans died during this time period. I'm with the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and my mission is to preserve the truth in history. And if you forget what I said, just go out here and look on the monument. It's written in stone on the east side. It's not correct to refer to this conflict as a civil war. A civil war is when you got a group of people in a nation that's trying to overthrow the existing government. That wasn't happening here. We didn't try to do that. All we tried to do was break off and form our own another government, which we did for a time. So hitch up your wagons and let's go back in time where you can truly understand this time period. Now, we're talking about a time where if you and your wife wanted to go to Huntsville, Alabama and do a little shopping, and you got on the wagon, you're talking like 3 days. So you got to put yourself back in that time period to understand a lot of this stuff. Okay, before we go any further, I think we need to clarify what the leaders had to say about what was going on back then. First of all, I'm going to read what Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederacy, had to say. This is 1861. We feel that our cause is just and holy. We protest solemnly in the face of mankind that we desire peace at any sacrifice, save at our honor and independence. We ask no conquest, no aggrandizement, no concession of any kind from the states from which we were lately confederated. All we ask is to be let alone. That those who